tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita,
Muévete para aquí, muévete para allá.
dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita, cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita, cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita.
Dámela bien rica. Vámonos pa' acá pa' la esquinita. Ok. Dámela que está bien bonita. Mamacita. Dámela pa' aquí, dame pa' llevar. A mí me gusta como tú lo meneas. Muévete ese bam bam y grita.
Bienvenidos a la cripta. Dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita,
Muévete para aquí, muévete para allá.
dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita, cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita, cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, toma, cosita.
Wow, baby. Tú me tienes como loco, my lady. Cuando tú lo mueves, tú me pones crazy. Así que mueve ese bam bam, baby. Ok. Dámela pa' aquí, dame pa' llevar. A mí me gusta como tú lo meneas. Muévete ese bam bam y grita.
Bienvenidos a la cripta. Dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita.
Hi, it's Steve Taylor here. Just want to thank everybody from the Persia open source team, the Ortelius open source project, the CDF, for all your support, for giving me the Persia Top Contributor Award, as well as the CDF Top Contributor Award. Couldn't have done it without all of you. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and big congrats to all the speakers of CDCon 2023. I wish I was there. Super day, super happy, super special day, being awarded as a top investor for 2022. And huge thanks to all this investor I am fortunate to work with during a whole year. Big shout out to the Ortelius community members. I can feel your support every day. Award are the motivator for doing more great things. Hoping to do the same again. Enjoy CDCon 2023.
Hello, my name is Sasha Wharton from Cape Town, South Africa, and I was awarded the Ortelius Community Award. A massive thank you to the CDF, Steve Taylor, Tracy Reagan, and the Ortelius community. P.S. Aliens are real.
Good morning, John. Aliens. I love aliens. And there's lots of reasons to, especially in fiction. Adventure and danger and the unknown and self-reflection and mystery and revelation. But the thing I'm talking about here is real aliens, which is a very different thing. And I should start out by saying that I think that life elsewhere in the universe is a physical inevitability. Even if the galaxy were not inconceivably huge, which it is, the chemical system that is life obeys the laws of kinetics and thermodynamics. And while it is possibly the coolest, most interesting thing, it's not magical. Intelligent life does not seem inevitable in the same way. It just seems extraordinarily likely. In statistics, there's something called the mediocrity principle. Basically, if you have a sample size of 1, chances are that that is from the most common data set. And to some extent, we have pulled one solar system out of the hat, and it has intelligent life on it. It has several species of intelligent life. Now, there are some reasons to think that, like, our version of intelligent life as it exists right now on this planet is not super common, but 0 reasons to think it's unique. But that's all preface. The thing I want to talk about is, why do people like me, who have an understanding of how discovery works, how science works, seem to never think that extremely unusual things are caused by aliens? And that's relevant right now because there are these unclassified videos and there's a congressional report coming out about them, and we do not know what they are. But there are going to be, and have been many times, things that we really do not understand. This has happened a lot in the history of our species, and it's often the first step on the path to discovery. We don't know exactly what's going on, we make guesses, we test them. That's how we end up knowing more things and being able to do more things. That's how we ended up with COVID vaccines and smartphones and in-depth knowledge of the Big Bang. But also, when you are inside this world, you know that there are a lot of big mysteries right now that are totally unexplained. We don't know what dark matter is, but it is most of the stuff. But also, we don't know why anything exists at all. Like, why there's matter in the universe, that's a mystery. We don't know how life started on Earth. Also, like, we don't know why we sleep. We don't know why we yawn. But here's the thing, almost every mystery could be answered with the word alien. And that makes it a certain kind of bad explanation. Now, we want to understand things that we don't understand. That's totally normal. And one way to do that is to find an explanation that will explain everything. There's a fairly new version of this, which is that our universe is a simulation, and whenever you see something that doesn't make sense, that's a glitch in the simulation. Now, to me, there are two big problems with explanations that can explain anything. First, every time we've ever had something go from mystery to not a mystery anymore, it has not been explained by something that could explain everything. We've had some biggies that have explained a lot, like natural selection or quantum mechanics, but they haven't explained everything. Like, for example, those two things don't do a great job of explaining each other. And the second thing, this is really important, I don't think it's not aliens. I think we don't know what it is. It's really important to be able to say that we don't know what something is without trying to immediately explain it. Whenever we do that, whenever we encounter something that's completely unexplained and we immediately try to explain it with some idea from our head, it's not based on data and observation and critical thinking. It's based on our biases and on our confusion and on defaulting to something that could explain anything. Things to know about these unidentified aerial phenomena: they are moving against the wind. They are detected by multiple sensors, including human eyes. They are moving in ways that known aircraft do not move. Are they aircraft? They might be. They might not be. The wrong thing to do is to dismiss these things as a joke just because, like, everybody's saying aliens. In science and in life, you have to follow the interesting, and this stuff's really interesting. It's weird. And honestly, I'm a little worried that, like, the legitimate interestingness of this gets overwhelmed by the conspiracy theories and the just wild, flagrant guessing about sexy things that could explain lots of other things. But most importantly, preferring a conclusion is the exact thing that scientists are taught to avoid. Investigating potential explanations? Absolutely. Figuring out new ways to gather more data? 100%. But focusing on explanations that could kind of explain anything have so far not helped us explain anything. John, I'll see you on Tuesday.
What is mentoring? Why is it important? Let's talk about that. So mentoring is an ongoing activity between the mentor and someone who receives mentoring, which I'll call a mentee. Over hopefully years, the mentor and mentee build a relationship. The mentor is someone the mentee can talk to about career issues, about alternatives like, should I take this job or stay in my current role? What kind of training maybe should I get? All that says that the mentor should be someone who has walked the path that you're at least considering walking and is in a position to give you the benefit of their experience. What a mentor isn't is a coach. So what's a coach? A coach is someone that helps you figure out how to do a particular task. That might be becoming a better developer, making use of a newly released, that is, piece of open source software, something of that nature. A mentor is more like the shoulder you cry on, the person that gives you help, and so on. A mentor shouldn't be your boss. A former boss is okay, but a mentor is someone you complain to about your boss. Hopefully you don't have to do that very often. But if they are the boss, they can't really fill that role. Now, what does a mentor get out of it? Well, by offering mentoring to people, and probably more than one, you do a few things. One, you get better at what you're about. There's nothing like teaching and mentoring to develop your own capabilities. Second, you build your own network of influence, which is a good thing. And hopefully it feels good to you. What the mentee gets out of it is not only someone to talk to, seek advice from, and so on, but ideally, your mentor will also be your advocate. When there are opportunities come up that you can possibly compete for, or maybe that you didn't even know about, your mentor should be someone that steps in, talks to you about the opportunity, and he is in a position to advocate for you about getting that opportunity. He is in a position to advocate for you. Mentor is also likely someone that other senior people in the organization say, mentor is also what about her? What do you think about her? And your mentor ideally will be in a position to respond pretty positively. If not, your mentor should be having that discussion with you about why he couldn't respond positively. So that said, how do you get the right mentor? Well, first of all, it's important to understand you don't only need, or maybe only don't have, a single mentor. It's okay to have more than one. If you're a technical person, a mentor that's in a technical career track is a very good thing. But there's nothing wrong with having an additional mentor who has a non-technical focus on things. That gets you the benefit of more than one point of view. If you do have more than one mentor, it's good to let them know about each other. This is the kind of thing where they can sometimes collaborate to help you better. You don't want to have too many mentors there. One of the problems if you do that is, first of all, you don't get much time with them. Second, the focused relationship you're going to build over some period of time really can't be there if you're trying to spread it across too many people. So that relationship, in conclusion, is really pretty important. Being successful with your relationship is necessary. Being able to be open with each other, having respect for each other, all of those are pretty important for mentoring. Now, how do you find a mentor? Well, first of all, it may be someone you know. They don't necessarily have to be someone you know well, but someone you'd like to get to know well, and that would be probably true on both sides. What I would usually do when someone asked me about mentoring is plan an initial meeting to talk about what does the mentee seek from a mentor and try and see if there's a fit. For the mentee, something to keep in mind is that you are the one that drives this relationship. Your mentor is unlikely to chase you and say, hey, how you doing? What do we need to talk about now? My own practice was if I hadn't heard from someone for a few months, I would talk to them. But in general, I would only do that driven by the mentee coming to me to say, what do you need? Otherwise, it could feel a little bit intrusive. There's nothing wrong with asking someone you are new to about being a mentor. But again, plan on that initial discussion to figure out if you've got a fit. You also want to know if the mentor really has time for you. Because if they don't, having them tagged as one of your mentors really doesn't mean very much. So in conclusion, mentoring is good for the mentor for a bunch of reasons, including growing your network, getting to practice your skills and helping someone developing capabilities, and that it should feel good to you. It's good for the mentee because you have someone to talk to, seek help from, and who can use their influence on your behalf. So good luck and happy mentoring.
Sorry?
I don't understand. Excuse me.
Because when you don't know the language, you feel like an outsider.
I'm sorry? Would you like a towel?
It can get pretty lonely, even when you're surrounded by people.
Shampoo?
A cook. A cook.
Hairdryer?
It's like that old saying, isn't it? You could be in a crowded room, but still feel totally alone.
Sorry.
But with Babbel, you could be having conversations before you know it. Sandwich. Do you have a cheese sandwich? Of course, there were a few bumps along the way. Small hills, really.
He's that close to my face, and then he suddenly stops and just walks away. That was the last time I saw my father.
But before you know it, you'll be able to chat with everyone. Morning, Marta.
Hey, Alex.
I think I'll have the chocolate cheesecake, please.
Yes.
I'm having a cheat day. Don't tell anyone.
It's our secret.
Hi, James.
Alexei.
You're running early today.
First time for everything.
Excuse me, which way is the park?
Right. When you get to the clock tower, take a left.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a great day at the park.
Hey, I'm Tracy Reagan, and I would like to talk to you about S-bombs, and in particular, using SIFT to generate S-bombs. All right, so what I'm going to cover in this short 10-minute presentation is encourage you to start generating S-bombs, first of all, how to use SIFT to get the job done, and what it looks like when we consume the data. But first, let me just introduce Ortelius, as it plays a primary role in this discussion. Ortelius is an evidence catalog. It collects and aggregates the DevOps and security data that you generate across your pipeline. It's an incubating project under the governance of the CD Foundation, and we are really about simplifying the adoption of microservices and improving security in your software. Again, I'm Tracy Reagan. I am the CEO and co-founder of DeployHub. I have served on many of the open source boards, including the OpenSSF, the CD Foundation. I'm currently serving on the CD Foundation's Technology Oversight Committee. And yes, I served on the Eclipse Foundation for years, way back when. I'm also the organizer for the Ortelius community. And I co-founded OpenMake Software back in 1995 with Steve Taylor. So let's just think about what the problem is here in terms of a modern architecture, a Kubernetes microservice architecture in particular. SBOM data is a problem in many cases, but when we move into a microservice architecture, it becomes more of a problem. And that problem is the data becomes siloed. So every time you build a container, that container ends up having its own SBOM, its own CVE reports, its own release versions, its own need for change tracking and impact analysis. All that is siloed in these individual containers. We don't have a good federated view of the data. Ortelius federates that data. Now, according to McKinsey & Company, and some surveys they have done, 65 to 80% of companies claim that they're seeking more visibility into application security logs. This Ortelius answers that question. How do we get them out of a log and into a dashboard and into a data store or an evidence store that we can actually act on the information? So what Ortelius does is it reads the data that comes from the pipeline. It captures the data for actionable insights and continuously exposes these non-compliant services to improve application security. And it helps with site reliability quite a bit too. So yes, getting started generating SBOMs is a critical piece of solving or hardening our cybersecurity around our software. SBOMs report critical understandings about your software supply chain, not just the dependencies, but things that you need to report to now, in particular, say, for example, the government. And without an SBOM, you have very little understanding about what your software supply chain looks like, because you don't see any of those lower level dependencies, those transitive dependencies. And it's oftentimes very hard to really identify what you're consuming if you don't have a way to see it. So SBOMs solve that problem. And just as a kind of a summary of what they give you a list of your dependencies. They tell you what license that they use. They can tell you where it came from, the all-important provenance, and the version information. And with this information, you could derive CVEs with a more comprehensive understanding of any issues in a particular artifact. Now, keep in mind, all this is point-based. We have one container that we're getting CVEs for, one container's SBOM. We're not creating in one SBOM a comprehensive, sweeping organizational view of the supply chain. That's what the evidence catalog does. So let's get to it, using SIFT. So SIFT is a popular SBOM generation tool from Encore that uses the Cyclone-DX format. It's a CLI tool and Go library for generating software bill of materials from container images and file systems. It does not consume them, it creates the data. So Ortelius then can use SIFT to add the SBOM generation and collect lower level dependency data to add to its aggregation engine and its versioning engine. So let's just talk about quickly how easy it is to add SIFT to your pipeline with Ortelius. So first, here's some sample code that shows how we've done it. Initially, we go ahead and install SIFT as part of the process. Then we call SIFT to create the SBOM, and then we capture the display of the SBOM. The next thing to do is pass the name of the SBOM over to Ortelius. So you would execute some DH commands, this update comp, which is for component, to bring that information, that SBOM information, up into Ortelius. Now, the results is you have a dashboard that shows the component information based on the SBOM for that particular component of the point problem that we all are now aware of. What Ortelius does is it goes a step farther. It says, hey, I can start aggregating this data up to the application level. So if the application team is using Ortelius and they've defined what their subcomponents are, Ortelius can now go and say, I'm going to bring all of the subcomponent SBOMs up to the application level and provide you a view at the application level. The next thing it can do is it can leverage that information. It can take that information and it can start building a profile of your organization's security levels. So, for example, it can say, you can go and say, hey, show me where Log4j is being used. And it can produce a report that says, these are the applications that are consuming it. You could also do it on an environment level and say, show me for production where Log4j is running. So now we're starting to think about taking that lower level SBOM security data, pipeline information, where something's been deployed, and connect that information together and start aggregating the data up so it can be actionable. So while most of us are probably aware of the benefits of generating an SBOM, some of us may not do it because we're not doing anything with the data. In fact, the Biden administration is now requiring SBOMs as part of contracts with the government, but there's some industry lobbyists who are pushing back on that and saying, why are you making us do that if you're not consuming it? Ortelius is about consuming the data and making the data actionable. So by integrating SIFT with Ortelius, you immediately begin putting the SBOM data to work. making the SBOM the basis for viewing and acting upon your resulting security profile. So I hope that was helpful in understanding the SBOM problem, especially in a decoupled environment. And please, if you are not already a contributor, become a contributor of Ortelius. Even having your voice at the table as an end user saying these are the problems we're having is super, super helpful. And if you have never joined an open source community, you can really help. It can really help improve not only your own personal branding around blogs or presentations you might do, but if you're coding, you can learn about microservices, you can learn about blockchain, and soon you'll be able to learn about something called the Chorus, which is a universal repo or an extension to an OCI registry. So thank you, and hope you learned something.
You finished scraping the gum off that lounger or what?
Everything right now feels so out of reach.
You always land on your feet, bro. You're Hyman.
They don't get out much.
I just want to rap.
Jenny?
Guard that with your life, but do not open it.
You went in to get us jobs, and all you brought back was a hamburger?
Okay, I don't think it's a burger.
You haven't looked?
What the hell is that?
How did you get it to do that?
I think he likes me.
Get it out! Get it out! Hyman.
This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. What the?
Host acquired.
Who said that? Okay, it's gonna be okay! Space.
Re-entry systems ready.
Wait, no! This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want.
Oh. What is going on?
I just wanna rock.
It's called the Scarab. It's some kind of world-destroying weapon. It's designed to protect its host.
This ain't what you want.
Sometimes it does what you want, and sometimes it doesn't.
I think I cut a bus in half.
The Scarab chose you, but it belongs to me.
That love you feel for your family makes you weak.
I just wanna rock. You don't kill my dog, stand on my money, don't lose my side.
The universe has sent you a gift, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do with it.
That's my high. 1, 2, 3, 4, throw up to 5.
Whatever you can imagine, I can create.
Let's party.
Yeah!
Nice choice.
I just wanna rock.
Whoa, it's like Batman stuff. Batman's a fascist.
I just wanna rock.
Hi. Welcome to my talk on domain-driven design. My name is Joseph Akaisi, a software engineer based in Accra, Ghana. Domain-driven design is one of the best ways to model our software. It allows us to build quality and have a shared understanding of our domain across our entire organization. Today, I'm going to show you what domain-driven design is all about. And I hope you can get interested enough to look even further into this technique of domain modeling. So what is domain-driven design? Before we go into understanding what domain-driven design is, important for us to understand what is a domain is. A domain is simply a subject area that you are trying to solve a problem for. And so it is an area that you want to build a software solution for. For example, if you wanted to build a solution for a problem of transferring money across borders, our domain will be borderless money transfer, because that is the problem we are trying to find a solution for. And so domain-driven design is a way to model our software that allows us to program a rich model for our domain. It allows for business people and the software team or the development team to have a shared understanding of the model. This allows us to build quality software and also build software that is easily understood by all the different areas of our organization. For me to explain further what domain-driven design is, I'm going to show you using an illustration of a contrived school management system as an example. And so domain-driven design comes with two very important patterns, the strategic pattern and the tactical pattern. The strategic pattern has to do more with the high-level overview of our software. It takes a very high-level approach to building out a model for our domain. The tactical, on the other hand, is more low-level. It's closer to the code, and so it deals more with objects and modules and classes. It's what you do on a day-to-day once you have a very rich model built. In terms of what I want to say is when you have a rich model that you build through the strategic pattern. And so we'll take a look at the first strategic pattern, which is the bounded contexts. And like I said, we are using a contrived version of a school management system. So we want to build a solution for managing a school. So that's our domain. And so our domain is very large, and it will be very important for us to break our domain into small sub-domains. And that's what bounded contexts have to do with. They have to do with breaking up our larger domain into smaller, more manageable or more understandable domains. And so for an example of a school management system, you're going to have different bounded contexts. Bounded contexts have to do with sets of processes that are clearly bounded within a scope. So for our school management system, you can see we have an academic management bounded context, things that have to do with the academics of the school. And so we'll mostly be dealing with things like which student belongs to which course, which college belongs to or has these courses, etc., etc. We also have a bounded context accounts, which have to do with the accounting aspects of our school management system. And so we want to be able to know which students have paid which fees. Have salaries been paid to these professors? How much salary is this professor taking? How much arrears does this student have? Things like that. And so we can see that within our larger domain of a school, we have these different units that perform very specific roles. And so bounded context allows us to be able to break up the school management system into these different units that perform all of these specific roles. So we have the reporting bounded context, the residency management bounded context, and we can have other bounded contexts as well. And then let's look at the second strategic pattern, ubiquitous language. Now, for all of these bounded contexts, it's important for us to have a specific set of vocabulary that we use within the bounded context that allows us to understand the processes and the different objects within that bounded context. So for us to understand what an ubiquitous language is, and I touched on having a specific set of vocabulary, let's take a look at these two sentences to try to understand what is going on. And so the first sentence reads, once a student completes their fee payment, the student can proceed to enroll in their course. Let's take a look at the second sentence. A student should be able to register for a course when they settle their fees. Now, when you take a closer look at these two sentences, you realize that they are talking about the same thing. The student being able to say, take a course once they paid for their fees. But you can see that you are using slightly different terms, slightly different words. And so to take away any type of ambiguity, it's important for us to define these words and stick to a specific set of vocabulary so that when we are discussing about our bounded context, we can have a consistent use of words and a consistent use of words that takes away any type of, confusion. For example, settle mean that you're going to pay fees after you have arrears or you're paying fees outright. It's important for us to define these vocabulary and be able to have a specific set of vocabulary so that we take away any type of confusion. So that's what has to do with an ubiquitous language. And every bounded context must have its own ubiquitous language so that business people and developers can collaborate easily. Then we look at the first tactical pattern, entities. Let's scroll inside a bit to see what's happening there. So entities are simply the objects that live within a bounded context. You can think of them as the value within that context, the value within that business subdomain. These are things that have to interact with each other to be able to give a bounded context meaning. And so for an academic management, we want to know which students have a role in which course. And so we have a student entity, which is an object, a course, which is an object within the bounded context. Then we want to know which lecturers teach which courses. So we have a lecture entity. Similarly, we have the college, which courses belong to which college. So these are the different objects that live within the bounded context that gives the bounded context meaning. It allows the bounded context to run certain type of business processes and align to certain types of business rules. You cannot have academics without the students. Students and lecturers must exist for there to be some kind of academic type of processes. So that's what has to do with entities. Similarly, we can see the accounting bounded context, for example, which has a student and a lecturer there again. Yes, there's a repeated entity between the two contexts. However, a student in an accounting sense may differ from a student in an academic sense. Usually we want to see this difference, right? So when we try to understand what a student is in an accounting sense, we want to know whether a student owes fees, whether a student has paid their fees. An academic context would have nothing to do, wouldn't really care about whether a student has paid their fees or owes any fees. They only deal with the academics of the students, what courses they've taken, what is their grade point average, things like that, right? The residency management also has a notion of a student and it has a room. We want to know which students are assigned to which rooms. And so all of these different entities live in these different bounded contexts to give that bounded context meaning and to be able to align to a business rule or a business process. In our case, a school management system and all of its internal processes. And then we look at the second tactical pattern, aggregates. And so, simply put, an aggregate is a combination of two or more entities. So it's usually formed by way of something happening in a domain or an interaction between two entities. Once there's an interaction between two entities, usually an aggregate is formed. So in our academic management bounded context, for example, when a student enrolls for a course, we create an aggregate out of that. A course enrollment has occurred, and so we want to store that course enrollment within our bounded context to be able to tell which students have enrolled in which courses. Same for the residency management context. We want to know which student belongs to which room. So when a student, say, registers for a particular room, we're able to keep a record of the residency enrollment. We're able to tell which student belongs to which room by way of this aggregate. Then we'll go to our third and final tactical pattern, domain events. A domain event is simply something that has occurred in your system. It's a record of what has occurred in your system. So when there's any change in your system, we emit a domain event, or a domain event is created. And so, for example, when within our academic management bounded context, a student enrolls for a course, we can say that a course has been enrolled, which is a domain event. Something occurred within that subdomain of academic management system. Or when a student registers for a room within a residency management, we can say a residency enrollment has occurred. It is an event that has occurred within that bounded context. Now, when an event occurs, it could be emitted by when an event occurs within a bounded context. That bounded context can emit that event to any bounded context that needs it, right? It's a very important thing to know, especially if you want to go into microservices. But we are not going to talk about microservices today. But just know that domain-driven design is a very good way to build very fine-grained and very quality microservice architecture-based software applications. And so what I was talking about, let's get back to what I was talking about. For example, if the academic management bounded context requires that a student pay their fees before they can enroll in the course, well, once a student pays for fees, right, which is handled by the accounting bounded context, you can fire off an event to the academic management. And once the academic management picks up that event, you can say, hey, okay, this student has paid for this fees, and then it can make that student eligible to enroll in the course. And so you can see how all of these different bounded contexts interact with each other, even though they work very isolated from each other. There's still certain collaboration that needs to occur to be able to give us the overall value within our domain. Our system can give that overall value, right? That overall business value. So that's what domain events are. And so that's just a contrived explanation of what domain-driven design is. Hopefully it piques your interest and you would like to get into domain-driven design. I highly recommend it if you want to build large-scale software that has a lot of business complexity. Domain-driven design is definitely the best choice to go with if you want to build very easy to manage and easy to reason about software, large complex software. And yeah. And so if you want to start, you can definitely pick up these two books, Domain-Driven Design by Eric Evans, which is sort of like the inception of where domain-driven design comes from, really. Or you can read a smaller version of what domain-driven design distilled by Van Vonen. It's an interesting read. I've personally read that, and I'll definitely recommend it to you. I have looked a bit into domain-driven design, the actual book, but I haven't been able to go end to end with it. But from what I've learned and from what I've been told by most of the DDD practitioners, is that it's definitely a good book to read if you want to get into domain-driven design, although it can be a bit more complex. So you would like to start with something a bit lightweight, especially if you're a beginner. So I'll definitely also invite you to Ortelius community. We are building a microservices catalog that allows us to track and version all of our different microservices and track the S-bombs and all of these different microservices that we may have in our application. And so these are the links to join. Definitely a very great community to join of diverse people. We talk about domain-driven design, we talk about microservices, S-bombs, how we track and version all of these different microservices. And yeah, it's a great place to come and learn and just, hang out and contribute to something valuable as well. So definitely come check us out. If you want to have a conversation with me, hit me up, have a question, those are my socials. You can definitely link up with me. And thank you for joining me on this talk. It's been great. Ciao.
The future, where beings appear from an alien environment, ready to work together in a spirit of harmony and understanding. No, it's not. It's 3 accountants from New York who want to borrow your Mac to run Windows. Power Macintosh is here, and the future is better than you expected.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Ortelius News Desk and the Intergalactic Ortelius Visionaries Conference. Today, we're going to Into the Dragon, also known as the CKA, based on the cult classic film Into the Dragon with Bruce Lee. A must-watch film, even if you're not a kung fu movie buff. I have a fun fact for you. Did you know that Steve and Tracy are black belts? I'll let that sink in for a moment. And a big welcome to the Emporius Galaxy. May the Force be with you. I took on the CKA on the 27th of March and successfully defeated the beast. I have described my experience in a blog on the Ortelius website, ortelius.io. Now let's discuss a bit of strategy here. So in my preparation, I used Code Cloud. I used the course presented by Mumshad Mahanabeth, which is extremely good and extremely in-depth. It also comes with a number of practice tests, which you can really test your knowledge on and get a good feel for answering questions in the CKA. I also did all the killer coder practice scenarios, which just adds a bit of extra flavor to your learning. But the most important one for me was the killer shell. I did this multiple times. I did the killer shell multiple times because it really allows you to mimic as close as possible the exam environment where your real estate of your screen is extremely confined. And I was able to develop excellent muscle memory and to test out strategies for saving time. I got to experiment with setting up multiple terminals and how to position my browser, how much to zoom, all of these things to avoid context switching and gaining as much of that real estate on my screen as possible. For this exam, you must practice and practice as time is really against you. You think that 2 hours is a lot, it's absolutely not. You've got to be able to have that muscle memory. As soon as you see a question, you must be really formulating a plan of attack. You must be really knowing how you're going to answer that question already in your head. So as soon as your fingers hit that keyboard, you're already starting to type out that question, figure out that question. So in my experience, it took 24 hours to get my results. You get 1 free rewrite. You only have 6 minutes a question, which should leave you roughly 16 minutes to review flag questions. I didn't have that time. I finished with 10 seconds to spare. Also, I would say, do not get hung up on a question. Just keep it kind of like either have a physical 6-minute clock ticking down somewhere, or just kind of have that in your mind that you only have 6 minutes. Get a feel for what 6 minutes is, so that you kind of know, hey, it's time for me to move on. Don't get hung up there. I did that in my first attempt, and that cost me too much time. Make sure you go through the tips for the CKA and CKAD documentation on the Linux Foundation site, because when the proctor inspects every corner of your room, and they literally will inspect every corner, they'll literally make you pick up your laptop, walk around with the camera, and physically inspect under the desk, top of the desk, behind things. They'll ask you questions about, what is that thing there? What is that thing there? Remove all electronic devices, all paper, printers, everything. Your room must literally be like a hospital room, except without any medical equipment and no bed, of course. They even asked me if I had a glass tabletop that I could use. Unfortunately, I didn't have a glass tabletop, but thank goodness this will let me write. So I'm just reiterating that the proctors can be extremely focused on making sure that that room is 100% the way it should be. I had to close blinds too, in case somebody could stand outside of my garden, I guess, and with flashcards giving me answers. You don't even have time for that. But anyway. Also, do not whisper the question to yourself. The proctor will jump out of this huge message that comes out across your screen and tell you to please stop whispering, which really breaks your concentration. I found that a bit annoying. So read questions out in your mind, speak them out to yourself in your mind. Although I prefer to speak them out loud, you can't do that in the exam. You can use any screen as long as you have a webcam, of course. So for example, my webcam is built into my Mac, so I had to use my Mac screen, which thank goodness is 16-inch. I would say if you're going smaller than 15, it's going to be tough because of the screen real estate problem. So try and use a bigger screen if you can. It's just going to help a lot. If you can shave seconds here or there in any of your process, I recommend it. The more time you can save, the better. And be quick and comfortable with on the bash command line and get familiar with VI. So if you really practice in that small environment, that screen environment, and you're fast with bash and with VI, it'll make you extremely comfortable when you get to the exam. I didn't bother with Tmux and any of that. It's just too many more things to remember. It was just too much. I just took my terminal and split it into two. I then used a very bright green font, and I enabled copy on selection just to speed up things. I also zoomed the Kubernetes documentation page to 90% to score as much of that real estate, and made sure that on the documentation page, the shortcuts on the side were visible. Also, what is also very annoying is that the documentation page has an extremely huge red banner, which you cannot get rid of, which steals a lot of space. I don't know if it's taken down yet. The last time I checked, it was still there. So just keep that in mind. You can also write on weekends, which I really recommend because it allows you to be way more relaxed without any work distractions. I did try writing in the week, which I don't recommend. I'd rather take a weekend if you can write on weekends. It makes it much more sense. And also to use, when it comes to your commands, use declarative commands as much as you possibly can, just to even build out the YAML skeleton for the answer. It'll just save you an immense amount of time, and it also helps with you to remember how to answer a question or course content that you went over. Right. Let me just share, after all of that, the blog that I wrote on the Ortelius website. First, I go over the keyboard kung fu. So this is the article. And that's right. Defeat is just a state of mind. And you're not ever defeated until you've accepted that as a reality. I thought I'd put in a bit of Zen there. Right, keyboard kung fu. So the keyboard kung fu that I used was, these are the main commands. I use these commands a lot. And I just spelled that wrong, so I need to fix that. Never mind. kubectl create, create-f, file, kubectl run, kubectl replace, -- force -f, and kubectl get. You will use those a lot. So get used to taking that command and using that for whatever you need to do. Also, get very familiar with the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet's got a mountain of awesome stuff in there. Even if it's not particularly focused on answering the question, it gives you a really good bit of starter code on how to answer a question. So for example, this one is fantastic for answering JSON path queries, for example, because it allows you to help you understand how to fashion your query to match getting that piece of JSON path and the correct answer for answering the question. Of course, I also created aliases. In the beginning, I had a ton load of aliases, which I realized was far too many to remember, because you have to edit the bash.c file yourself, and that also is added to as part of your exam time. So you don't want to have a lot, you just want to have a few. And these are the ones that I found, these are the best. For me, when I wrote the exam, these were the best. Basically just clearing the screen, going back to my history and using my commands in history to just reuse them. The replace command, you can see I shortened it to KRFF. Sourcing my bash file, editing my bash file. Also, making these two variables is a massive help, and they're all over the internet actually as a recommendation, and they really are excellent. So
you want to do dry runs and then export that into a YAML file so that you've got the skeleton code. And then another one is, say you need to delete a pod for whatever reason. You don't want to wait. You want to hammer that pod with brute force. So you force it and you don't give it any grace period. You just destroy it because it's all about time here. So these were my tips. I hope many of you find these useful. If you want to write, I really recommend that you go for it, because if I can do it, so can you. And this could even be Steve. This looks like Steve. Yeah, he's definitely doing it like CK. Smashing that CK, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it's all about. And thank you very much. And we'll be seeing you soon.
And that's a wrap for our May 19th, 2023 Visionary Summit. Thank you to all who participated. I know it takes a lot of work to put these presentations together, and for all who attended. We certainly appreciate the pleasure of your time and company. And I hope to see you all at the next one during the Holiday Visionary Summit in December. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Global MVPs are teaming up with Challenge Legends.
Here comes the big dog!
Who will be the champion of champions? The Challenge World Championship.